Bill, tell me about the Edmond on the Go project.
So Edmond on the Go is a bond proposal. It's 22 projects that would cost, if approved by voters, $231 million, and they're broken down into 3 separate categories: streets, fire safety improvements, and parks improvements. Now, what voters need to understand is that each one of those sections they vote on Tuesday the 5th. So they vote whether or not they want to approve the funding for each one of those projects, and then the money for those projects have to be used exclusively for the projects that are identified in the GO bond. So if someone votes for the streets and that money is approved, that's $151 million to do 15 projects of streets, which also includes, ironically enough, 33 different repaving projects of streets all around Edmond. But the money has to be used solely for the things that are identified on the ballot.
So for streets, are there any particular areas that the city is looking to improve?
Well, we'll do 33 different streets across the city that for repaving. That'll improve obviously the quality, and it'll improve the roads on a lot of paving projects that have been waiting for us to get funding and get done. We'll also improve accessibility and quality on a number of our busier streets. We'll widen streets to make them safer and more accessible, and obviously to help with mobility. We'll focus on some intersections. Some of our higher intersections identified by the Edmond Shift Plan as some of the places where we see some of the most conflicts or some of the most collisions, to try to make those safer and more efficient. One of the things that I think is in the streets projects that not a lot of people talk about is our intelligent transportation system, which is a technology system that helps us move traffic in a more efficient manner all around the city. It uses that real-time technology to identify places where either congestion or maybe construction or maintenance work or even an accident has slowed things down, and ITS will control the signals in those intersections and on those streets to try to improve traffic flow. It can keep traffic flowing at a more efficient rate, even if there's a 40% increase on traffic on that road at that particular time, or if we need to slow traffic to make sure that maybe if there's an accident at an intersection that our first responders are able to respond safely and address what's happening there and get it cleared out of the way in a more efficient and safe manner. ITS is a way to do this, and as part of the GO Bond Streets package, there are 20 intersections that would have improved ITS technology in place.
I know for parks too, there's a lot of emphasis on Mitch Park being improved.
Well, Mitch Park is one of the $70 million worth of projects that voters will decide on. Now, there's a number of different projects and parks, existing parks, that would get improvements. Mitch Parks, I think the focus is on the athletic fields and also on pathways and sidewalks that improve ADA accessibility and actually accessibility for everybody who visits Edmond. If you go into Mitch Park, you'll notice that sometimes to get from the Mitch Park YMCA to the parks or to the ball fields, you have to walk across the street. There's really not a walkway. And if you're somebody who has accessibility issues, if you need a paved pathway to get to the fields, there's not a lot of options there. So this would improve those. It would also improve the ball fields and make them nicer. We would upgrade the ball fields so that they would be able to host maybe larger tournaments or maybe some larger events there. That's one of those. And I think there's part of the parks package that we don't talk a lot about that I think needs to be talked about is there are 13 parks in neighborhoods that we've identified as needing new equipment or a refresher or just something to help them. They haven't been addressed in a while. So while we'll also do ball fields, while we'll also do maybe a new park or additional parks elsewhere, we're going to go into the neighborhood parks. If the voters approve that, we would go into the neighborhood parks, put in new equipment, refresh some of those facilities for some of those neighborhoods.
And of course, there's Fire Station 3.
Well, Fire Station 3 is 41 years old, and it is half the size of what I would call a modern fire station. There's only 5 people full-time staffed there whenever, and you have to remember that it is right now on Danforth Road, just east of Kelly, which is one of the busiest roads in Edmond. And so for that equipment to get in and out of there to respond to emergencies means they've got to navigate the traffic on Danforth. Even when they return, they have to stop traffic to back their engine in so that they can get out quickly. It's a little over 5,000 square feet, and a modern fire station is almost 11,000 square feet. So what they want to do is move maybe about a half a mile east to the corner of Kelly and Hawthorne, It will put them in a more centralized location. It'll put them in a location where they have better accessibility, and it'll give them a larger fire station that will allow them to be able to get their equipment in and out. It'll double the capacity on what they're able to park there as far as equipment goes, and it'll allow them to have even more firefighters on call there. Because right now, one of the busiest fire stations in Edmond is Fire Station 3. They do more than 2,000 runs a year. And if Fire Station 3 is responding to a call and another call comes in, there's not a second crew available to address that call, so someone has to come from another fire station. And you're talking about oftentimes incidents where seconds matter. So this would actually allow them to staff up Fire Station 3. It would give them more equipment. It would put them in a more centralized location. And also, as we start to see our fire crews starting to diversify, it would allow us to have facilities for both male and female firefighters to be able to live comfortably there at the station.
Gotcha. And if, so let's just say one bond proposition passes, the other doesn't, is it a issue where all of them have to pass together, or it just can be one can pass?
Yeah, voters are voting on each issue, each question. So each voters will be asked to say yes or no, whether they support or not the questions for streets, and that's $151 million for those 15 projects. Yes or no for parks, yes or no for fire. If one passes, then the 15 mils for the bond program is in place, but only until it pays for the projects that are approved. So if, let's say voters have passed only the fire station, then the 15 mils would only be in place long enough to raise the $10 million for the new fire project. The other two do not kick in. The 15 mils does not cover those projects. So they're voting specifically for each one of these questions. If one passes, yes, 15 mils, but it just changes the duration of the time. If all three passes, it's up to 10 years, or until $231 million from the bond program is collected for the projects that have been identified. And they have to be used specifically for the projects that are identified. So let's say for some reason we come in under budget and there's a couple of $1 million left over for the fire department, then that money must go to equipping the fire station or hiring firefighters, or it can only be used for fire safety.
And lastly, how much would this all cost taxpayers?
Well, I think it depends on the assessed value of your home. So a mill is $1 for every $1,000 of value that Oklahoma County tax assessor values your home at. So for example, if your home is $100,000, it's $150 a year because it's $1 for each thousand. So if the 15 mils is, it would be $150 for that 100,000. So the average home in Edmond is around 300,000. You're talking somewhere around $400 to $450 a year for taxes increased in a year, somewhere around $40 a month on the average home, the median home in Edmond. So yes, it is a property tax increase. It is we haven't had a property tax increase in Edmond since 1980. So it is right now Edmond gets no property taxes, and so this would be the first time that there would be a jail bond in place in more than 40 years, but it also would pay for some of the highest priority projects and some of the highest priority issues that residents have told us they need, staff has identified. We had a 25-person citizens task force that was appointed to take a look at projects to decide which ones were the highest priority, and they came back with this list of council, and council concurred with them. But it is just, if they vote for this, yes, it will increase property taxes. It just, the duration depends on how many of the questions pass.
Gotcha. Anything else I haven't asked you that you want to say?
Well, it's real simple. Council spent a lot of time looking at different ways to try to come up with funding for vital and high priority projects. And they're going to the citizens to ask them if they support this or not. And all I can say is this is what the projects are, and this is what they will do if they're passed. But I know that we've gone to citizens. We've asked for citizens' input on the advisory task force. Citizens get to vote on whatever they want, and we'll follow the citizens' direction. And when we're done with this, if there are any of the bond questions that pass, there'll be a citizens oversight committee to ensure that money is used exactly for what the voters have approved. So this really is a question of of giving it to the citizens or the residents of Edmond and letting them make the decision on what they really want to do, if they want to invest in this, if they think these things are high priority enough. Then as soon as these projects are completed, then that millage falls off of their property taxes and we move forward.